All right, so let's go ahead and get started. It's 3 minutes after. Dun, 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 dun. Hello, everyone. I'm Wendi Friesen, and as you may know, I'm a hypnotherapist. I have been for over 20 years. Dang, that's a long time. And I've been working with addiction for, 10, 12 years. And as I had said in the previous class, at first I thought, well, hypnotherapists really shouldn't be working with addiction because addiction is something that is a medical problem. It's a disease, and it's something that you are never going to get over. And it takes a professional who's been really well trained in the addiction field. But I decided to do it anyway. As some of you know, I'm a little bit, bold that way, that I say, well, let's try it. Let's just find out. The results were phenomenal right out of the box. And here I am, having created a program that I know is profoundly successful and that is in harmony with the way that the brain works. And that's what you're learning in the classes, is how the brain works. Now, if you missed class number 1, you can go back and listen to the replay. And we talk a lot about the neural pathways and the networks and how the brain is going to change. Today, I'm going to give you more techniques and specific ways to help get a brain to change for your client. Okay? So, where should we start? I have so much I want to share with you. Gary from Trinidad, awesome. I want to sail down to Trinidad and come see you. Let's see. Jen wants to know where the printout link is. It's in the emails. It's on the Facebook pages. The link's everywhere. If someone wants to give it to you in the chat, they could do that as well. So quite interesting is the approach that's used by 12-step in AA, which we talked about in the last class. Quick review here. And that approach is that you're powerless, that you have to admit you're powerless and surrender. If you fail at AA or 12-step, it's because you're not ready, or you don't want to, or you haven't hit bottom. And then if you fail again, you haven't hit your bottom. When you go to meetings, there is a negative energy. There's a lot of failure and a lot of people dumping all their emotions and their fears and their worries. And as I had mentioned in the other class, you've got people talking about the disease model and how it is such a struggle. Even 10 years later, 20 years later, I'm still struggling every day. And we're bonded by sad stories. We're bonded by fear. We form tribes based on something we have in common. Support groups, if they were truly positive and supportive, would be fantastic for helping you heal. However, that bond that we create with fear and uncertainty and having that something that we're all against, which is that monster of addiction or drugs, alcohol, it keeps us together. So there's some good in being bonded together, but we're not bonded by positive things. So when you're in a meeting, you're being bombarded not just with the words, but your brain is feeling all of those emotions and sending chemicals into your body that creates a chemical state in your body. And your mind is growing more neural networks to all the things that are fear and anger and sadness. So one of the things that really convinced me that I'm on the right track is I made a program online that's just a 1-week addiction program. It's for drugs or alcohol or gambling or whatever it is you want to use it for. It's somewhat general. Well, anyway, there was a man who has been an addiction counselor in an addiction treatment center for over 20 years. He's very well trained, very highly respected. This is his profession. So he admitted to me in an email that he had secretly relapsed 5 years earlier. He had been drinking every day, all day, for 5 years while he's still an addiction treatment counselor. He used the online program for 1 week. And he then said, I used that and I've totally quit drinking and I'm convinced I will never have a problem with this again. He says, but what's really interesting is that 1 week that I experienced with your program using hypnosis is bigger and more powerful and more amazing than anything I've learned in 20 years in the addiction profession. So the 1 week program that I have is, it's not as powerful and specific as the program I have for alcohol or what you would be doing with your clients for a specific drug or for their specific addiction. But even with that, he said it was more powerful than anything he had experienced in 20 years. So another place in Southern California where my son went, and as I've told all of you in the previous class, my oldest son has had an addiction problem for many, many years, and that's why I've become an expert in addiction. A place that he went that was a science-based method when he was sitting in the office with the psychologist. They were talking about what he could do, and Sean's very logical and he wants things to really make sense. So the psychologist pulled out of his desk drawer this program right here and said, Sean, you should totally use this program. This will just, convince you beyond anything else. And Sean said, that's my mom. Which, of course, the difficulty is that he really doesn't want to learn from his mom. He wants to be able to do it himself. And he's got his stubbornness that way, and that's his prerogative. But anyway, that was kind of interesting. So from the science perspective, we know that there's certain things that worked, and in the addiction world, there are centers that are accepting this kind of work and that are really interested in this kind of work. All right, so the other thing that goes on in a treatment center that is 12-step. The rehab centers, 30 days, and one of the meetings I went to, which was family night, and when my son was there, they do some family therapy, and it's called psychodrama. Have you all heard of psychodrama? It's getting different people to play parts and to enact a scene and to bring up certain emotions and help you through your problem, in this case, your addiction problem. So this young girl, she's about 20 years old, and she's going home the next day. And in the psychodrama, the lady who is the leader of this has her sitting there and has some other people playing the part of all the drugs. So she's saying to the girl that when you get home, it's going to be really hard because the drugs are going to be there all around you, and the people playing the part of the drugs are like, I'm the drug, I'm going to get you. And she's giving the girl all the fear possible to feel that she's going to have to fight really hard to get over this addiction and not do drugs again. Then she has the people who are representing the drugs go outside of this double glass door and stand outside the door in the room, and then the woman says, and at night, even when you're in bed, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel those drugs just taunting you and wanting you to come back. And the people outside the door are banging on the windows and banging on the doors. Let me in, let me in, let me in. Isn't that amazing? So this was the psychodrama therapy from a trained professional who I'm sure has great intentions, but what are they creating in the brain? What's happening when the drugs are visually right there? They're angry monsters. They're trying to break in. They are banging on the doors and the windows. What's happening when they do that? So go ahead and type in just some of your thoughts on that and share that with everybody. Francisco from Mexico. Hello, hello. Doris in Vero Beach. That's where my mom lived. So yeah, what are you thinking, like when you create those monstrous drugs that are people banging on these doors? What we know about hypnosis is that you just created a new neural pathway to her deepest fears and her deepest uncertainty and her own like self-loathing for having failed in the past and her anger and everything else. And now she's going to go out of there with one very solid belief, which is, I'm doomed. They're everywhere. I have to be so strong to try and say no. This is going to be really, really hard. So what if someone leaves rehab and they have a belief that they're done and that it could be easy and that we've changed the triggers, we've gotten rid of the emotional connections with all the stuff in the past, and we actually have turned them into someone who is strong, healthy, in control, remember? So those three words were connected from our last class, connected with deep beliefs of who they are in the future that we brought back to the present. And each of those words is connected to anything that they see, think, or feel that reminds them of their drug or alcohol. They immediately go to being strong and healthy and in control. And that changes the pathway that the brain is accessing the information. And then what do they feel? So, I'm going to go home, I got it nailed. I'm going to become an Ironman triathlete. Game on, right? Yeah, okay. Let's see. Chris says it's frustrated with themselves and with their actions, not getting anywhere. Conditioning them for relapse, says Paul. Absolutely. Eveline says, reinforcing how difficult it will be to be drug-free. Bridget, compounding the fear. Bridget, I think I'm saying your name wrong. Brigitte? Brigitte? I'll say Brigitte because it sounds so pretty. Sue says, and they made it real again. Yeah, yeah. You empower the drugs over the individual. Anne says, a self-fulfilling prophecy for failure. And Edward says, these emotions will remain vivid and persistent. And why is that? Edward, that's great. Because they gave it sound, they gave it emotion, and fear is the emotion that just gets driven into our brain the fastest. They gave it visuals. They gave it everything except for a smell. They didn't wave the meth underneath their nose. Well, anyway, I really feel that this is where the failing is, and it's what you're taught. If you go to school for several years to be an addiction counselor and this is what you're taught, then that's what you're going to do. So that's where you and I have to, all over the world, start spreading this message, and don't be afraid to tell people the truth and back it up with the science. Okay, so here we go. Bruce Lipton, you may know he wrote a book called Biology of Belief. Biology of Belief is about how our thoughts and our environment affects our genes. So the biology of belief is how our brain sends messages to our genes, and our cells have receptor sites on them, and those receptor sites adapt based on what we think most of the time and what we feel and what we're surrounded by. Those receptor sites send information into the cell and into the gene. And if you have studied any of Bruce Lipton's work, and if you haven't, you should, but if you have, you know that his discoveries and the science and the research that he's done is that the gene expression changes based on the information we give it. So what you surround yourself really does become real on a genetic level. So now we look at the disease model of addiction. Yes, our genes are determined already. The gene doesn't change, but the gene is turned on or off. And the way that the gene chooses its expression to have cancer or disease or illness is based on our environment, what we think, what we believe, and so he named it the biology of belief. It's a fascinating connection when you think about it with addiction, isn't it? So we think about addiction being a disease, and maybe it's a disease in some ways that just like negative thinking could be a disease, or bad self-talk could be a disease, or gambling could be a disease, but it's not a biological disease, it's just taught to us that way. So if the genes are turned on and off, is it really a disease, or is it just conditioning and fear? Yeah, Doris says, excellent book for sure. Yep. And Paul says bad hypnosis. Oh, so true, so true. Yes. Okay, so here's another little rehab story, and then we're going to get to a little more science. Another rehab that I was in, it was getting near the holidays, and the director during the meeting said to one of the addicts, says, oh no, he said it to the whole group, I'm sorry. He says, so the holidays are coming up. Oh boy, you know what that means. Yeah, it's going to be really, really tough, you know. People relapse around Christmas, Thanksgiving, all that. He says, I know this is going to be a really hard time for you. Oh, everybody just went, oh, God, yeah, oh. What kind of pictures did they just form in their mind? What belief did they just access within themselves? What values did they look at unconsciously? So then he says, well, we have a video we're going to watch, the video about what to do for the holidays so that you hopefully won't relapse. And everybody's, oh, not that again. We've seen that. Do we have to watch that video again? Because these people have been coming to this place for months to go to these meetings with this guy. It's a private organization. And apparently they've seen this video many times. I think he pulled out a VHS tape. Woo! So this is the tools. These are the tools that they have, which are reinforcing the same thing. And there's something else I wanted to, oh, okay. So that is another thing that's hypnosis. It is negative hypnosis, but it's the only way that a lot of these places have to do the work. They don't know about what we're doing. They don't know why it's so amazing and miraculous. Okay, so you know about Stanton Peele, I hope. Stanton Peele is, you get on Facebook and follow this man, and you tell him that there's the spelling of his name, and you tell him that Wendi sent you. Stanton Peele is all about the facts and the figures and the proof and the evidence of why AA and 12-step doesn't work, and he totally understands our message and what we're trying to accomplish, and he's brilliant, and he's a very nice man. Okay, so the other thing is Candace Pert. Have you heard of Candace Pert and the molecules of emotion? So her research was about how our memories hold emotions, and when you have something that's a fear memory or a negative memory and a difficult emotions, these emotions get trapped in the memory, and they release chemicals into your body. And these chemicals create depression and anxiety, and they're very real chemicals that affect your body. But the discovery was that when the emotion is trapped in the memory, it continues to release these chemicals all your life. And what happens when you trigger one of these memories, it, as a chain, it looks for another similar emotion, and it triggers that memory, so that one starts releasing chemicals. Then it goes into another one that's similar, and so bing, 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 it connects all of these similar memories with similar emotions, and those all start releasing these chemicals. And then what she found is that if you can release the negative emotion from the memory, you're not getting rid of the memory, but just release the negative emotion from it, it no longer releases those chemicals. So these are the molecules of emotion that Candace Pert discovered. Now think about this with addiction, helping someone get over addiction, or the way that 12-step meetings are doing it, which is continuing to reinforce these negative emotions, having you talk about them but not resolve them. So you're igniting them, and when you hear the stories, you're putting more fuel into your own emotional memories because they're similar, and you're connecting more. Bing, 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 bing. And as I told you in class 1, people would tell me that they said, wow, I never realized why I had to go drink right after I got out of a meeting. I felt so bad about myself, I would stop at the liquor store and go and drink. Oh my goodness. Okay. So Guapo says, why not empower the person? I know. And you know, after 10 years and 6 residential rehabs for my son, and knowing what I know, talking to directors and addiction counselors and all these people in the industry, I just don't get why everybody's not doing this. A few are, not many. Okay, so here's an interesting, oh, before I do that, okay, so the molecules of emotion. The work that you're doing, if you're a hypnotherapist, is you know how to go into a past memory, help someone resolve it, and change the meaning in the memory. You're releasing the negative emotion. For instance, if you do regression to cause, and you take your client back into a memory that says, okay, this is a great example. This was one of my clients, and she was coming in to quit drinking. So I told her to go back to the first time she felt that feeling, and we were talking about the feeling that's the connection with alcohol. So I didn't say, you know, the need to drink or to get drunk or anything like that. I just want the connection that has something to do with that feeling about alcohol. And I want you to go back to the first time that you remember something like that. And we count down and let her go back. So she's in her mother's arms, she says. My mom's holding me. How old are you? I think I might be about 2, maybe a little less. But I feel like I'm a baby. And I said, what else do you notice? And she said, well, I feel very loved and I feel good and my mom's holding me and that's good. And I said, okay, what happens next? And she said, I'm crying. I can feel, I'm really upset and I'm crying. I'm on the floor now and I'm crying. I said, why are you crying? Well, my mom put me down. And there she's crying and where'd she go and whatever fear and stuff. And then mom comes back and I said, what's happening now? And she says, mom's holding me again. I'm okay. It's okay. I'm all right. I said, what else do you notice? She says, well, I can hear the sound of ice cubes in a glass. It's a sound I know really well. I said, what else do you notice? And she said, The smell, it's alcohol. Now, as a child, she didn't know it was alcohol, but her adult self is experiencing this moment in her childhood. So her adult self knows, oh, that's what that smell is. Oh, and so I said, how are you feeling now? And she says, good, good. Mom is holding me. Everything's good. I'm safe and happy. And what was happening at that moment, and has happened hundreds or thousands of times in her very early life, was the connection with alcohol, the smell of it, which of course is a very powerful trigger to her feeling safe, loved, happy, being held by mom while mom's drinking. So that smell, that feel, the sound of the tinkling ice in the glass. Now, you think about the triggers, and we take this emotional memory and we change it, and we change the emotions in it. We don't change the memory, but we change the emotions in it, give it a different belief, and help her disconnect from the alcohol in that memory. When people have negative memories that have negative emotions, as a hypnotherapist, for those of you who are, if you take them into that memory, something that happened when they were a teenager that affected their self-worth and still has something to do with this drinking or drug problem, you don't change the memory, but you take the negative emotion out of it and you replace it with a positive lesson. You bring the adult self in, and the adult self helps implant the positive lesson and the positive decisions that are being made inside of that memory that are going to create a different result if that person triggers that memory. Does that make sense so far? So if I was trying to quit doing drugs and I drive by a certain street corner where my dealer usually is, and that would trigger this memory that's about like, oh God, I've had such a crappy day, I just had this horrible fight with my boyfriend and I don't think I can handle it anymore. That goes into my memory of fear or self-worth or loneliness or whatever it is, and bang, 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 my memories are triggering each other and all those negative emotions. But what if instead that thing triggers that memory, but that memory now holds a new emotion and a new value and a new belief? So then that's the end of the line. It triggers that one memory, and that memory instantly triggers, wow, you know what? I got a freaking life ahead of me to live that I really want to live. This is good. I'm strong and healthy and in control. You know, that adult self, that inner child, they're both smiling, jumping, flying around. That's what the memory is filled with, right? So now it's not going to go triggering all those other negative ones. Make sense? Okay. So now I have something interesting that I think relates to all of this. There was some research done where they had brain scans on the people, and in their hand they had two buttons, A button and B button. And the only decision they were asked to make is to press button A or button B. And they would look at their brain and try to figure out how the person makes a decision and where the decision is being made in their brain. But they discovered something even more interesting. So they say, okay, as soon as you decide which button you're going to press, you press it right then, at that instant. Okay, pretty simple. So they're like, oh, A, B. You know, and what they found was the person's brain had made the decision to press button A up to 10 seconds before they actually pressed it. So the person thought that they are deciding right now, button A, button B. But in fact, their brain on some level had made that decision and lit up on the brain scan the result of the button they're going to push seconds later. Isn't that interesting? So I think, what if this is the subconscious mind in action? Whatever it is that creates a decision before we're consciously aware of it. Like, we want to make the decision not to drink or not to do drugs, or whatever else in your life you don't want to do. And you think that, you know, here you are faced with it, and you're like, oh yeah, woo boy, that glass of vodka, woo, drive that thing right home. But then you think, no, wait, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to make that decision. And you're like, okay, it's like button A, except that The moment you made that decision, which is the willpower that you're going to enlist to stop it from happening, the decision was already made seconds earlier, right? So by the time you actually put something into action, that you drive by the corner where your drug dealer is, and you put that willpower into actions, and nope, I can do this, I can fight it, I can be strong. You already had several seconds of something happening that was already activating your brain, sending the chemicals into your body. Isn't that interesting? So willpower possibly can't work because you've just had your body flooded with the decision before you had a chance to do something about it. Sue, when you say Libet's clock, you can see a reenactment of an experiment on YouTube. Is this in relation to the AB button? And if so, do you have a link to that? 'Cause I don't have any more information on that piece of research. I just discovered it a few years ago. So now, with this AB button, those of you who are hypnotherapists, when you put a decision in the subconscious mind, and it happens automatically, it happens before the person's conscious awareness, before you even have a glimmer of it, you know, being there, you put it in that subconscious mind. Is that the thing that they're discovering with that AB button? Is that subconscious that makes a decision long before our conscious mind can even fathom it? And in that subconscious, if you create a new trigger, and in our addiction work, like with the alcohol, the new trigger that I create is that they want a cup of tea. And I put that at the very base core place of their decision-making process that is well below their conscious awareness. And even using those words in the session and saying, and any time that any part of you notices alcohol, sees alcohol, smells it, or hears a glass with ice tinkling in it, the next thing you're going to notice is that you have an overwhelming desire to have a cup of tea in your hand and feel the warmth and the strength and the soothing smell of that tea. You can just smell it now. And it's going to happen below your conscious awareness before you even think or imagine anything else could happen. You're going to instantly feel strong and healthy and in control. When you see that tea, when you feel the warmth, when you make the tea, every part of the process will remind you that you are strong and healthy and in control, and you love yourself more than anything. And any thoughts or any visions or any experiences of alcohol are going to fade away far into the distance. You want that tea now more than ever. That's what you want because you know what that means for you, right? So this is the changing the trigger to get a different result and filling their brain's memory instead of the negative emotion with the fear that was installed from all the treatment centers and the psychodramas and all of that. We're going to fill those memories with a totally different outcome, with what they do want, which is being strong and healthy and in control. The T is the anchor. Oops, sorry, I keep shaking the table. The T is the anchor, and when that's triggered, it's going to go to that belief that's anchored into that memory. Make sense so far? Yeah, so Paul says willpower lasts just a few seconds. Motivation is better. Yeah, but we've got to have it anchored in the subconscious. That's why this stuff works. Because we all know, even people who aren't hypnotherapists, we all know that all of the power is in the subconscious, and the miracles that all of you create in everybody's lives that blow your mind just as much as it blows theirs. Because we're accessing the most powerful thing there is, that subconscious. And yet, it's so rarely used for addiction. But we're getting there. Yes, indeed. Okay. So remember, all of this is based on a book that was written 80 years ago, and it was all they had then. So when you talk to people about 12-step or AA, say, yeah, that's great. If it helped you, that's awesome. I am so happy for you. Congratulations. I know sometimes it can be a little tough to try and get past your addiction. But that book was written 80 years ago. And it was the best thing they had at the time. And thank goodness they did that. However, what else do we use today that is technology from 80 years ago. A light bulb, sort of. But what other methodologies or science, especially when it comes to the human brain and the physiology and our health and all the things we know about how the body and the brain works, what else do we use that would be 80-year-old technology? Discoveries have been made about these neural networks and pathways and how easily we can change them, and unrelated to addiction, but if you visualize muscle growing, if you visualize it, your muscles actually grow. If you visualize yourself getting stronger, and they've done experiments to show people increasing strength and muscle size, if you visualize it, your body grows muscle. And we know how we change the cells. We've got all the science to explain it. And yet, we're using something that's 80 years old. And, you know, again, this is the conversation to have with someone who is talking about 12-step and AA. And you're going to be very kind and not critical about it, but you're going to propose that. That, you know, it's 80 years old. We have so many discoveries, and we've seen so many miracles, and we know so much more now. There's not much that we use. It's 80 years old. Oh, there's the YouTube link for Libet's experiment. Thank you. Can't wait to watch it. Paul says, the initial sensitive emotion. I think the initial sensitizing event, the ISE, and maybe you've learned it as an initial sensitive emotion. ISE is generally the initial sensitizing event. Could it be considered a trauma? Absolutely, yes. And if you don't get the initial event, if you get the subsequent events, that's good, but until you get that initial one, you haven't gotten the core that holds all the power. Is that the training that all of you got? I hope so, because that's really important. Steve Parkhill, who wrote Answer Cancer, he helped me tremendously when I was new 20 years ago. And he helped me to know how you got to the initial sensitizing event, or if you only got one of the subsequent ones. So he said, after you're all done and the adult has rescued that inner child and you've, you know, restored whatever the new positive lesson or belief is that you plant into that memory, then have the person go, like after you're totally done with the session, then have the adult go back and find the inner child and ask, how's the child doing? How is that little boy doing or that little girl doing? And don't lead them at all, and try not to implant any expectations, but just say, how's the child doing? How's that little boy doing? And the person might say, oh, well, he's in the tree, he's playing, and say, what is he doing up there? Say, he's just laughing and smiling, and he's like picking apples and throwing them. It's really, he's having fun. Ah, you know, you got it. Okay, so now if you say, so I want you to go back, you know, and find that little girl and see how she's doing. Just tell me what she's doing right now. You know, she's on a swing. Yeah, and what else do you notice? How's she doing? Say, oh, she's very sad. She's just still crying, and she looks like she's really afraid. Oh, okay, now you know you didn't get the initial event. You got some work done, and that's good, but you haven't gotten to the initial one. Make sense? All right. Steve, Paul knows Steve Parkhill. Yeah, isn't he cool? I went to Florida and went fishing with him. Yeah, he was great. He spent so much time with me back in the day. I don't think he's doing any hypnotherapy anymore. So, Cheryl says, I guess AA and 12-step are negative memory programming. Exactly. And that is, you know, in this training, we're doing 3 classes for free right now, and I may continue to do more for free because I'm really excited about all this. But that's one of the things we want to cover even more, so you're really solid about how you talk about AA and how you understand the programming that's happening with AA and 12-step. And again, it's not that they're trying to hurt people or keep them addicted or have that horrible success rate of only 5%. Read Stanton Pill's books. He's got the research. Well, a lot of people do. That article I sent all of you on Facebook, and it again says 5 to 7% solid research. So anyway, just have really good have a really good solid foundation for how you have this discussion. All right, another little quick review that we talked about in the first class is the different elements that you want to make sure that you have done the work on. I think there are 6 elements of change that are really, really important to get the 6 elements. There may be 7 or 8, but these are the ones that I think are important, and I think I have 7 here. The belief. The belief about who you are, what you're becoming, and what is true for you. So you do that with a future timeline by having the person meet their future self, that a person is designed to get better, that we are designed to heal and get better all the time. So that's the belief they have. They believe that they're strong and healthy and in control. The belief then drives the values. The values, when you talk about strong, healthy, and in control, what you did that we learned in the first class is you created values around every one of those words so that they have these values that are really solid, that are a result of the beliefs they have. You do that with a split timeline, with forgiveness work. You do it with Temple of Wisdom, which we haven't talked about yet, and we will. Yep, Paul says, yes, him and Kind. Jerry Kind, I love you if you're out there watching. Yes, I do. You love me too. Jerry Kind and I are great friends. Then you create identity, because if your beliefs create your values create your identity. And your identity has to do with meeting your future self, of course. Your inner child, also working on your past timeline, because you learned who you were through all these experiences in your life. And if you go back into the past timeline, which we're going to learn, and you go back into these memories, you don't change the memory, but you change the identity of who you are in that memory and what you're going to do differently. Self-sabotage. You do parts therapy to change the self-sabotage and do regression to cause to make sure that they aren't drinking or using drugs for a positive reason. Well, usually it is a positive reason, but there's an underlying positive reason, which could be something as serious as, I just don't deserve to live. I'd be better off dead. I'm not worthy of sucking air in this world. That would be self-sabotage and positive intention for doing drugs and alcohol. Got to find that. Repetition. You have to have repetition. It's just not a one-time thing. Unfortunately, our brain needs a little bit of time to grow those neural networks, as fabulous as they are and as fast as they make us change. We need some repetition to make sure we flood the brain with the neurons and the growth to the things we do want so that we outweigh the old ones. Create new anchors with the repetition as well. Self-talk. You are what you think you are. What you think about most of the time is what you become. What else? You know, all these sayings that are about what you surround yourself with creates your reality. And as I said, with the biology of belief, we know that it changes our gene expression. My God, we know that it changes our brain. We know from Candace Pert's work that it floods our body with chemicals that cause depression and sadness and fear. So that's self-talk. And then the other thing is changing the triggers, and I talked a little bit about this. So today I want to give you a couple of methodologies to change the triggers. There's something called the alcohol zapper in this program, and it's also in this manual, this very amazing training manual, word for word. But what we want to do with this alcohol zapper is, the idea is that anytime there is any thought below their conscious awareness or consciously, or any possible thought, we want to get the brain subconsciously to just zap it to a different location in the brain, to a different memory. Now, how did we create this memory that they're going to go to? These addicts and alcoholics, they don't have a lot of positive memories. There's not a positive future or a positive outcome or anything their brain can go toward. So if you're going to create a trigger that's going to go to something positive, you first have to build it. If you build it, they will come. So we have to build it by going into the future timeline, as we did in class 1, and also going to meet your future self. So to meet your future self, it's very simple. You're going into the future to meet your healthy, strong self. You have your client standing face to face with that future self, looking in those eyes, and you use wording such as, you know, when you look in those eyes of your future self, and this is, again, remember where I talked about leading, and we're doing it for the greater good, yeah? When you look in those eyes of your future self, just notice what clarity is in those eyes, and look at the health, and look at the joy, and see that happiness in your future self. And it's almost as if you can look right into the soul, and you can just notice the change that has happened, and how your future self just has this rock solid experience of life now, something like that. And so now you have your client ask that future self, what is the most important thing you've learned now that you're healthy and strong and in control? And then you wait and let that future self talk to the person. So if I'm doing this on a recorded version, like on the Alcohol Freedom Program, a person is simply processing it themselves. I'm asking the questions, giving them time, and of course I can't ask for feedback because they're just listening to a recording. But they're getting the information they need. And then a next question might be, ask your future self, what made it so easy to get healthy and to forget about alcohol? That's a very leading question. It presupposes that they have indeed done that, and that it was what? Easy. So how nice is it to learn your presuppositions? 2 thumbs up for that. So ask your future self some questions like that. Say, now as you look in those eyes of your future self and you really see the strength, ask your future self, what is the one thing that made him so strong? Another great presupposition, right? And if you're not so good with presuppositions yet, go ahead and Google it and read and read and read, and just get yourself to know the sentence structure and how you're implanting something that presupposes that has already happened. Now some magic. Have the client jump into the body of the future self. You're going to see through those eyes, you're going to feel through those arms, your heart is going to beat with that heart, and just feel what it's like to be that person. What kind of identity do you have now inside of that body? This body is so healthy, and the mind is so clear, and you're so creative, and you have people around you that love you and you love them. What does it feel like to be loved, and to be lovable, and to be strong? Okay, so not all those questions. That's too many at once. But when you put them inside of that body, it's the identity that is changing. I hope you're taking a lot of notes. Okay? So spend some time in that experience. Now, you're going to come back out of that body of the future self, and you're going to be facing your future self again. 1, 2, 3. Come on out of that body. There you are. Of course, go a lot slower than that. And look into the eyes of that future self. And just really, really have gratitude for what you just learned, for what your future self gave you. Go ahead and thank your future self in whatever way feels good. Yep. And then bring all of that back to the present moment. Bring it all right back, all the way back to the present moment. Bring with you everything you learned and everything you experienced. Everything that it means about you. Which that's a really good question as well. When they're in that moment with their future self, when they're inside the body, you could ask them, now that you're healthy and sober and you've totally just forgotten about that part of your life, what does it mean about you? And there you're going to install a really important value. So bring back to the present moment. Now we want to create a new trigger. So now they're in trance, their subconscious mind is wide, freaking open, and we want to create a new trigger. So they're at their timeline in this present moment and saying, now, there's something really beautiful and easy that's going to happen, and you know that you are strong and healthy and in control. And any time you see alcohol, a bottle of alcohol in the store, or a sign that is the bar that you used to go to, or you see other people drinking, or you even smell alcohol, instantly, automatically, below your conscious awareness, before you're even aware of it, you're going to feel that surge of power, of knowing that you're strong and healthy and in control, and everything that means to you. You're going to know that you feel so good about your life, nothing could take this away from you. And one thing you do want is a glass of beautiful sparkling water, or perhaps a cup of tea. Right now, instantly, you want that because you know this is who you are, and this is what means so much to you. And now you notice as you step out into that future timeline, there are the people that you love, happy to see you, your life getting better every day. We are designed to get better, stronger, healthier. So now you're creating a different trigger because you have that future memory that has beliefs, values, words, sounds, emotions, and we create a pathway directly to that memory, and we connect it with the drugs or the alcohol. And this is where the work that I'm doing is really brilliant, because if you do only one of these things, you did some good work. But you have 6 things that you are packing together that are going to be part of this massive trigger, right? And so this trigger creates an unbelievable force for them to, and I do suggest bubbly water, which is like, some Pellegrino or club soda, or tea. And I suggest either one of those. And truly, my clients are somewhat addicted to tea and bubbly water. Not such a big problem, though. That's all right. We need to be addicted to something. Who doesn't agree with that? Do you think we need to be addicted to something? Okay. Let's see. I'm going to read a couple of the comments. And Ralph, in your emails, there are links to the recorded sessions of these classes, yes. And I post the links for the recorded sessions on my Facebook pages as well. I just got a kitty on my table. Hey, Loki. Say hello. Say hello. Best kitty in the world. Okay, there you go. When I start talking in my hypnotic voice, Kitty comes running and plants himself anywhere near me that he can. All right, nice coffee mug. Yes, thank you. What if you gave your client a mug that had a very special and unique look to it? Or even you could get mugs made that have some like special symbol that is going to be their symbol that represents their strong and healthy and in control and their power thing, and then they get that to keep with them, and maybe you give them several of them so they can have them at work and in their car and at home, and whenever they look at that subconsciously, I'm just kind of figuring this out as I go, so run with it if you like the idea. Subconsciously they're getting triggered, right? And that is another thing that triggers them to feel good. Paul says, compounding triggers to replace the old ones. Absolutely. Yep. You need to replace the bad with the good to override them. Yeah. And so Cheryl said that. And Cheryl, what we're doing when we replace the bad with the good is we're putting good emotions, good values and beliefs, good self-talk into that memory so that that's what's triggered. Yay. Guapo says, the feeling of being clear-headed can be a great positive thought for an addicted person. Yeah, and in the last class when we talked about that future timeline, that was a lot of what it's about, creating that positive memory in that future timeline. Elizabeth says, super thinking. Yeah, it is. Paul says, suddenly, looking at you in your eyes, I get a strong need for a drink of tea. And probably, just the training that I'm doing, your subconscious is always listening. It's always sucking all this in, and I wouldn't be surprised if you guys have an overwhelming desire for some bubbly water or some tea. For some reason, club soda and Pellegrino, those have worked wonders for people who are quitting drinking. And things like this, as I said in my first class, one of my customers who had used the recorded program, he said his friend bought him whiskey at the bar, didn't know he had quit drinking, waved it under his nose, and all it did was make him feel more free, more strong, more in control. A woman at the grocery store, she says, when I'm going down the aisle with all the wine bottles, I just dance and laugh, and people look at me funny, but it just makes me happy that I don't have to do that. So Paul says, with your picture on it, it's on the mug. Could be, could be. Yeah, that could be a very good idea. Wow. So Donald says, I call it power self, and I ask them to make it a daily practice. Very good, very good. Yeah, so any questions you have, feel free to put the questions in. So I'm going to continue to answer some questions. And I wanted to just look at my notes to make sure I'm covering the things that I wanted to cover. So today was about the brain science of addiction. how hypnosis affects the addicted mind and body, which we went over all that, and all the different elements that are needed. The psychodrama. They'll turn you into a psycho if you do the psychodrama. AB buttons. Okay, I'm going to give you another really cool thing that you can do to release negative anchors. This is really cool. While you guys are putting your questions in, I'm going to go over this a little bit. So let's say that I had, what would be, well, there's a lamp behind me. Let's say that that lamp was something that I bought, and my husband hated it. When I brought it home, he yelled at me and yelled at me, and I put it there, and he said, I don't want that lamp in my house. That lamp's, it's a gift from your mother, and you know how much I hate your mother, blah, 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 right? So we had this big argument about the lamp. So now that lamp for me is an anchor. And that anchor, when I see that lamp, even now if I'm not looking directly at it, when I'm in the room and I'm scanning the room, that lamp is going to trigger negative emotions, the anger with my husband, or how he feels about my mother, my sadness about my mother, all these things, right? So unknowingly, in that subconscious mind, even just the mere glance of that lamp is going to create that. So what if you had a fight with your husband or your wife in the kitchen, and the door slammed, and that door slammed so hard it shook everything, and that doorknob, when you were pulling on it, or it broke off, or something happened, now that doorknob is an anchor for the emotions that happened in that event. Imagine how many things in your house or your office or anywhere, your car, are actually anchoring negative emotions, and you're getting triggered. If you're an addict, how many things are there that could be triggering all of these things that create fear and worry and anger and blah, 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 boy, oh boy. Now, the reason that I noticed this is many years ago, when my business was really big and things were going great, I bought a house. It was a brand new house that nobody else had lived in, and I got all new furniture, and everything in the house was new. Everything. Whew. And I realized, I feel pretty good in here. Yeah. And as a hypnotherapist, I realized, there's nothing in here that has a negative association. There's not one thing in this house that represents anger, a fight, sadness, a spot on the couch where I cried and cried after a phone call or something like that, right? And I thought each one of these things in your life carries these negative emotions. So there's a process, it's called Release Negative Anchors, and it's on I can have you download the session. I'll do that. I'll post it somewhere so you can download it for free. I'll put it in an email that you all will get. And it takes you through the process of, like, you close your eyes, you get relaxed, you open your eyes, and you're looking for something that has a negative feeling. So you could just do this right now. You could look around until you get a feeling. Doesn't take long, does it? No, it doesn't. Okay, so now you find an object that holds a negative energy. Close your eyes. Feel it in your body. Where do you feel that negative energy? Find out what it's about. What happened that created that negative emotion that was just triggered? Now, this is the short version of this exercise, and you can open your eyes if you want, but the short version is, let them go through the process a little bit of experiencing what it is, and then say, what would you like to learn as a result of that? Something perhaps that you're never going to do again, or something different about yourself that you're going to learn right now as a result of that experience. Okay, it may be that I'm never going to let anyone lie to me again, or I'm going to know that I am absolutely worth whatever. So get a positive statement attached to that. And if they say something negative, change it into a positive statement. And now, they've got their eyes closed still. I want you to open your eyes and look at that object again. And I want you to notice that at the very core of who you are, you know that you're going to demand honesty in your life. You're not going to let people lie to you. That you are someone who deserves honesty, who is worthy of being spoken to honestly, whatever. Okay, so we're infusing that object with something positive, right? We just got rid of the negative anchor, but we did something better. We made it positive. So now when you go through the room and you see something, you're like, oh, the lamp. All right, on. Yeah, I got rid of that stinking husband of mine that didn't like my lamp. That's right, because now I'm blobbity blobbity blah, right? Make sense? So you do that with a whole bunch of things that have negative anchors in them. Isn't that cool? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to take some of your questions now. Sue says, would you do some work to change the positive emotional association in your first example, the alcohol and the hugs? Yeah, for sure. Well, we want that child to have a different experience. So let's say in that memory, we say, okay, what I want you to do, I want your adult self to go and hold the child, hold that baby you, and I want your mom just to go to the kitchen, dump that out, and I want her to get all the alcohol bottles out of there. She realizes this is the most destructive thing she ever did to her life, and she loves her baby more than anything. So have mom get rid of all those bottles all the way out of the house. They're in the garbage. The truck just came, took them away. Now I want your mom to have a really wonderful cup of tea that is jasmine. And in a moment, your mom's going to come back to you with clear eyes and a beautiful heart and just love, love, love for this baby. Never going to risk again the love between her and her baby. Okay? So that would be a really nice way to do it. Yeah, Jan, I'm curious about essential oils to redirect or use as a new positive anchor. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And if you do that in hypnosis during their session, when you're creating that anchor, especially when I talk about that alcohol zapper, or it could be the drug zapper where it just, bam, the brain automatically goes there. You wave that under their nose at that time. Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. And you know, here's the other part of this. Creating a mastermind group or a think tank, if we could come up with so many things that are creative and powerful and just off the charts amazing, like the fragrance or the cup that has a symbol on it that's part of an anchor, or many more things, we could be unstoppable, worldwide unstoppable. So yeah, good one, Janet. I like that. Margaret, dealing with social pressure. Yeah, and that's going to be the thing that is your belief, your core values, and the things that creates about your identity and who you are. So that will all change once you change those things. Ooh, dandelion tea and liver cleansing, because they do need some liver help. Wow, very nice. Okay, any other questions? I'm scrolling around. Hang on. Paul says, have a date with me in France. Oh, absolutely. I'm coming to France. We're going to do a training there. All right. The release negative anchor. Yeah, I'm going to put a link in an email that comes from this Webinar Jam email. So it'll only go to the people who have attended and who are watching the replay. So I'm going to put a link in there for you to download it, because that's a really cool session, and then you can work on that. Shannon has a great point. She says the only risk with essential oils is if that particular smell already has a negative association. My mom has a negative association with lavender oil, which no one could have even considered. Very interesting, huh? Yeah. So you want to make sure it's something that is very unique, and maybe just ask them ahead of time and say, you know, when you think of fragrances that you really like lavender or mint or lemon, or I don't know, for me I love the smell of grapefruit. What's a fragrance that just really makes you feel good, you know? Find out. So maybe if we were to create an entire methodology that included essential oils as part of that anchor, because that is such a powerful anchor. And what is it called, boys and girls? When you smell something, it goes right to your brain, called olfactory, right? Okay, so you know, if you create that, maybe you have 2 or 3 scents that could be part of that. Okay. So now, at the top of the hour, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to see if this works, because I want you to see what you can, because someone like really wanted to buy the training manual, and the materials. And so I'm going to tell you about them real quick, and then if you decide you want to start with some of these, your training isn't done, but if you wanted to order them now, I'm having them printed in very large quantities, so you get, for the client manual, the client workbook, you get really beautiful materials that you're going to give them, which gives you credibility. Each page is about something else, like this is about your beliefs, and it helps them to understand what they're working on and what they're working towards and why changing your beliefs is so important. So every time they come to see you, they're going to be working on another level of this, and this one, I think it says identity, and it says who are you, and it's all about the things I've been teaching you, so that if you miss some of the steps along the way, they're still going to be learning it, and you can review it with them. But every page is very nice, and it has a spiral binding, so it opens really nice for them to do the journaling. Self-sabotage, whoopsie, the why, and then this and that. So you can buy the client manuals. The price goes down the more you buy, and the training manual, you only need one, and it's got every script word for word, all the information about all the drugs, all the detox, all the AA 12-step talk, some of the marketing stuff. And actually, I'll talk to you about the marketing plans a little right now as well. But anyway, what I'm going to do is, and there's some flyers, I'm going to see if I can do this pop-in thing. Open in a new, display the offer. So what you should be seeing now, and I don't know if you are, because I've never used this part of Webinar Jam, you should be seeing a page that has it has 4 items in the shopping cart: the training manual, and the workbooks, and the flyers that are for your customers and for rehab centers, and if you want to do a 10-hour online class. So you should be seeing those. So let me know if you're seeing those or not, because I'm not positive if the pop-in thing is doing what it's supposed to do. So it says that it is displayed. I just need to know. Okay, yep, it's there. Okay. So did it open in a new window so it didn't cover up the window that we're doing the webinar in? Because it's supposed to open in a new window. And thank you for letting me test this on you. Okay. So if you want to get some workbooks, if you want to get the manual, or if you want to attend the training, the other thing that we can do is have a live training. It's 2 full days, so you would need to come, if you want to come to Boulder for the training, it's the 3rd weekend in June, and you can come here and do live training, or you can do the online training, or you can do both, and that includes, well, the stuff that's in there. You can look at it later, and you can decide how you want to do that, okay? All right, so yeah, just click on the Show Me More link. Okay, cool. And Jackie Liz. Hey, Jack, you know, one of the things I want to do is get together several really good trainers and create like the monster training that is a lot of brilliant minds such as yours, and give the different perspectives of how we put this into motion, but giving a lot more credibility to it by having a lot of experts, including Stanton Peele and, you know, different people we can get that are really experts in the business. So you, Jack, you would be awesome to have in this project, because I love your work. I really love your work. Yay. Okay, so what else? Okay, so if you decide you want to order the books, I'm getting them printed. It takes about a week to get them printed, but as I said, I'm doing them in very nice, large quantities. So you get them way cheaper than you could ever get them printed, and everybody's happy. There's that page, and then there's the new one that I made. It has a lot more journaling in it, so it's actually twice as big. So this one, number 7, is about changing the triggers, and this is about consistency being good for me. And I just think, you know, when you're looking at something that's colorful and nice and positive, when they leave your office, they're going to be seeing something that reinforces all of the things that you did with them, and they're going to have some really nice positive homework. Okay, so now let's talk about the marketing thing. If you know who Rational Recovery is, Jack Trimpey is the man who created Rational Recovery, and he and his wife have workshops. At least they used to. I assume they're still doing them. And they had workshops that were 4 days long, and they cost about $3,000 at the time, or $4,000. And they would get 30 or 40 people that would come to their place in California and work on alcohol stuff with a very novel approach, which is what he calls the beast, so that this thing is outside of you, and it's the beast, and you have conversations with this beast. And he was full. His trainings were full at that kind of price with 30, 40 people coming to his trainings. Now, I don't know how he's doing it now, if he's still doing that. And Jack says, that would be great. Right on, Jack. Yay. Okay. I did a training in Sacramento at one point, and I just barely advertised it. I had 6 people that came and paid $1,500 each to spend 4 days with me, but they only spent 4 hours each evening for those 4 days because they were local. So they came each evening for 4 hours, and we did hypnosis. We ran through all the elements of what they're doing and followed up with them, and even long-term, you know, following up, amazing, awesome results. I think there's only one that didn't do well. It's pretty cool. Anyway, so that is an option for types of classes you could have. You can do small groups or large groups. You could do a free 2 or 3 hour presentation with the information that you're learning from me and the information that you know, but making sure that you cover all the solid principles and all the things that you would learn in the 10-hour class. And you could do that presentation for free and then get people to come to your small group experience. You know, they might be more comfortable with only 4 or 5 people. Then there's another couple, and I think their website is something like non-12-step something or other. They charge $8,000, and I think it's like a 3 or 4 day experience, $8,000 per person, to come and spend 4 days with them doing the work to do non-12-step work. So, you know, it's just, I think the 30-day thing is kind of a myth of 30 days of rehab, but half of that is usually spent detoxing. So you're not getting any benefit or any therapy or any training. If you were to spend 3 or 4 days of quality time, most of every day, you're going to get way more therapy than you did by seeing the psychologist at the rehab center for 30 minutes once a week. So, you know, and we also talked about this before, that you're not going to take someone who is actively under the influence of the substance or the alcohol. They have to have detoxed, and, you know, we talk about the medical detox and what the requirements are, and that's all in the training manual as well. But we'll do that. We'll talk about that some more in the next one. So you're not going to be dealing with the medical issues of it, but you're going to be knowledgeable about that. You have to know how to speak that language and how to use those words. So the other thing you can do is you can take a client who wants longer term help. They don't want to see you for 2 or 3 sessions and boom, you're cured. Bye-bye. Sorry, I got to be your friend, sort of, kind of, and now we're done. They want you to be there for months. So you can do a 3-month or a 6-month contract with them to be accountable, to be honest, to be reliable, and to stick with the program with you and work with them. The first week, you do 4 sessions or 5 sessions in that first week. And actually, I have the whole plan outlined in the manual, how you would structure it. The second week, you have 3 sessions. The third week, you have 2 sessions. And then from there on, you keep seeing them twice a week. And then there's some daily accountability calls that are just 5 minutes or so. But this whole time, they have you as a lifeline. They know they have you long term. So remember, rehab is very expensive. A whole month of rehab, they paid $30,000 for it, and they failed. And then they paid another $20,000 somewhere else. And then they paid $50,000 for another one, or their family did. So they're looking at these very expensive options, leave home, lose their job, go away from their family. Everybody wonders, where did Joe go? But instead, you offer them something that they can do right here, but they have a lot of support. And so now, for that, you charge quite a fair amount of money, and you are with them longer term. So they have a contract with you that's a $5,000 or $10,000 contract, depending on how long they're staying with you. And that would be private therapy. Now, the other, oh, bye, Ralph. You just say goodbye. The other option is a center that was in Sacramento where this man had just one big open room, and it was 12-step. He's the one that said, like, oh, let's watch the videos because it's the holidays. I went there to one of the meetings with my son, and he charges $12,000 for 1 year. All he does is have a meeting Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. That's it. He has meetings 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. for 2 hours. That's it. Charges $12,000 for a year per person. And you have a 1-year membership. Brilliant. If only he was doing some good work. He'd be really brilliant. But think about this. If you want to create a center that is a relapse prevention center, and you incorporate that entire freedom mentality in it, that they're going to get stronger, happier, and better every time, they have a place to go to support them with happy, positive people, with uplifting music and high fives and people who are all about love and awesomeness. And he had about 100 members at $12,000 a year. You might want to do the math. Oh. So I think, you know, there's a lot of ways to market this, and there's a lot of, I mean, in addition to just seeing clients privately, there's so many ways to do this as a group. So if you did the group thing and you had memberships for a year, and, you know, at a certain time of the day, people can come to your place and they can have a meeting, but it's a different kind of meeting because you're actually hypnotizing them every time. And there's some really positive things that come out of it. You can also do private sessions, and for that $12,000 a year or whatever your price is, it can include 2 private sessions a month, or, you know, whatever else you want to do with that. But I think that would be a really, really nice business model to work on. And I do have a really enormous business plan for doing that, but it includes not just 1 meeting per evening. It's workshops all day long, and they can come and go to however many workshops, and those workshops are led by other experts in the community on things like nutrition. When you quit drugs or quit drinking, what do you need to do for your brain? So a nutritionist does a workshop on amino acids, or on someone does liver cleansing, or the doctor that is the addiction doctor comes in and talks about, you know, should you or shouldn't you do these drugs, and on and on. So anyway, that is the idea. So if you want to come to Boulder and do a live training, we can do that, but I'm also going to start the online training, which will be 5 classes, 2 hours each, and we're going to just laser through all this stuff and get you really well trained. You'll have the manuals, everything else. So then you can go talk to treatment centers and say, hey, would you be interested in an alternative track that is based on this and this and this and this? And you'll have materials to give them, because I have those, they're already created, that are going to help them understand what you're presenting. And many treatment centers are looking for something more powerful, more positive, and effective, you know? Yeah. Okay, so any other questions? We're at about 1 hour and 15 minutes, so I'm going to start to wrap it up. Also, if you buy any of the packages, I'll include the Alcohol Freedom Program. It has all the audio sessions in it, and you can just get a feel for what is in there and what's going on with that. So I'd include that as well. And I'm going to give you the release negative anchors thing. When you do that process, it's a little bit mind-blowing, because you don't realize how many things around you have negative emotions anchored in. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts, or ideas? Wow, we have a nice big group today. This is great. Between the people watching the replays and the live people, and then on YouTube, people watch the replays there as well. We're reaching a lot of people. So keep telling your friends. And the 3rd class is on Wednesday. So keep telling your friends. They need to register in order to get in. But once you're registered, you can watch the replays, of course, as many times as you want. But just spread the word, man. Let's be a force that cannot be stopped. So, what else? Okay, well, I know that we're running over time, so I'm going to get going. If you have any thoughts or questions, you know, make some notes and save them up, and on Wednesday, or whatever day it is for you, wherever you are in the world, Wednesday around here, we'll talk some more, okay? Cheryl says, do you sell the manual as a PDF? Yes. I can send you the PDF of the manual right away if you're buying it, and I'm also going to mail you this one. And the reason I want you to have this printed one is just because, you know, when we hold stuff in our hands, it has a totally different effect on us, but also I want you to be able to make notes, and I want you to be able to, you know, mark it up and highlight the parts that you need and just, you know, do everything you can to make sure that it has everything you need as you learn and in the class. So yeah, I'll give you a PDF with it too. So Sophia Bustamante, I had a great question. Do you have to be trained as a hypnotherapist to do this? And that is actually a really fantastic question. Yeah, in order to do hypnotherapy, you really need hypnotherapy training. However, the training that I'm doing also trains you in hypnotherapy, not to the extent that most of these people have been trained, but it is going to give you a really solid foundation in hypnotherapy. Now, the other thing I would do, if you're not a hypnotherapist, but you are a counselor of some kind or a therapist, a coach, something so that you're already comfortable, like seeing clients or working with people. I have videos that are hypnotherapy training, and it teaches you some of the techniques and methodologies and the principles, and you could start learning that way. Then you could also go to a class with someone, like you could go to Jerry Kine's class or, you know, someone really good and go spend a good week getting hypnotherapy training. But in the meantime, I believe that almost any really good counselor, coach, or therapist could use these methods, and once you've been through the training, use these methods, learning the basics of hypnotherapy and giving your client the recorded sessions that go along with their workbook, and be very, very successful. So I hope that answers your question. What kind of are you a therapist of any kind? I'm a coach and a therapist. Okay, so Sophia, that has a lot to do with it. If you are a coach, you're already doing a lot of these things that are change work, that are subconscious things in the language patterns and a lot of the expectations. You can also study on your own. You know, there's a lot of classes out there. And I have the School of Hypnosis. I used to do an online training for hypnotherapy, and I could pull that out and give you access to that. Jared says, Tommy Rosen had a nice series of webinars on addiction freedom with yoga, Kundalini yoga, but he's rigid on 12-step as the core. Well, there you go. Elizabeth, any concerns with an extended contract that the client becomes dependent on the session? Yeah, that's a great question, huh? Yeah. Well, okay, I asked the question earlier. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to wrap it up, but I'm going to stay online. So I'm going to just wrap this up for all of you who need to leave, but then anyone who wants to stay online and ask questions, we'll do another like 10 minutes of question and answer. So anyway, thank you all for being here. I'm Wendi Friesen, as I said. If you're watching the replay, awesome. Tell your friends, come to the live class, and we have one more left that's live and free, and I may continue to do the free ones anyway because I'm just digging this. Tell your friends, spread the word, and I will see you in a couple days. Okay. The question was, oh yes, okay, so Elizabeth, an extended contract and the client becoming dependent on the sessions. So earlier I asked, do you think it's okay for us to be addicted to something? Or maybe it was, do we need to be addicted to something? So what do you think about that? Do we need to be addicted to something? So I want you guys to answer what you think about that. Do you need to be addicted to something? Paul Ellie says hypnosis is a must in your bag of tricks. Yeah, it is. It's what makes this all work. Yep. Will there be notes? Yeah, Ted, there will be notes. I'll have to work on that. Oh, Sue is going to say hi to Terrence for me, Sue. Hey, Sue, tell Terrence to have the training. I'll go to London and do the training with him. Okay. Cheryl says, if it's positive, what's the harm? Jack says, bye, Wendi. Honored to participate in the seminar with trainers. Yep, I'd love to have you. Client workbook purchase button is not working. Okay, I'll work on that in a few minutes, Edward. You're welcome, Eveline. Paul says addicted to love. Cheryl says if it's positive, what's the harm? Well, I think that our brains are meant to be addicted to something, and hopefully it's positive. Like my client who became an Ironman triathlete after he quit drinking. He didn't know that his brain could be wired to love and crave and want to be an athlete and train. The things that we do that we're passionate about, doesn't our brain use the same addictive pathways to want to do that? When you are driven to succeed, you are addicted in a similar way that your brain is looking for those feelings that it wants and all the values that support it and the beliefs, and you want to just do it and do it and do it over and over and over again. You wake up in the middle of the night with ideas and creativity, and then you pursue your passion. If you love knitting, are you addicted to knitting? Quite possibly. Sue says, I wonder if we're used to rituals ancestrally, and this needs to be addressed somewhere. I will tell Terrence. I think he would like you to check out BWRT too. Yeah, actually, I have a fellowship with Terrence in his organization. But anyway, just remind him. Say, you should bring Wendi over here to do the addiction training. Jared says, rather than addicted, to fall madly in love with life and our authentic self. Right, so that's a nice way to say it, Jared. We fall madly in love with that thing. So I'm saying, you know, addiction seems like a negative thing, but the brain's process of falling in love with something, being passionate about something, being driven, having purpose, our brain is using a lot of the same methodologies as it does for addiction. So could we be addicted to bike riding? My God, are people addicted to bike riding? You bet. All the physical things that we do, you get addicted to because your body becomes accustomed to it and it has to have it. Even if it's not a substance, it just has to have it, right? Yeah, well, Sue, I'll come to London regardless. I just need someone to be my setting it up person. So yeah. And Cheryl says a serotonin release. Yeah, so you're getting it from the drugs or the alcohol or sex or doing something awesome. Volunteering, whatever it is that you do. Yeah, Paul says to love, not to sex, because sex actually can be an addiction, and that's a tough one. That's, yeah. And porn addiction, you know, I have a program, a hypnosis program for porn addiction. It has been miraculous for a lot of people. The same principles apply, same stuff. Changing the triggers. My first client who had a porn addiction, we made his computer a positive anchor that triggered him to feel free and happy and never had a problem again. Edward says, thanks for the free training. I love listening. The quality is great. I'm so glad the quality's better. I think getting the new webcam helped a lot. Yay! And Webinar Jam, there's a little link somewhere there that has my affiliate code if you decide you want to get Webinar Jam. Click on the link in here. Then I make $1 or $2. Margaret says we need to love and be passionate about something. Addictive is maybe the negative sense for a word. Exactly. So that's why I'm bringing it up, is because it's the process. And understand that if you're replacing an addiction to drugs or alcohol, for an addiction to come in and see the hypnotherapist long term and have someone who is going to be the driving force in their life in getting them to love themselves, forgive themselves, have their family back, do something phenomenal, what would be better than that? And we're not going to call that addiction, but yeah, if they have a long-term contract and they're coming to see you and they know that you're the one that just feeds their soul, what's wrong with that? Not a thing. Patricia says, I think we're supposed to be addicted to something. Sophia says, it might help to have temporary addiction to something super positive to get you away from a negative addiction. Yes, high five. You got it. Yep. So you could call it a temporary addiction. However, it's going to become a lifestyle, a life purpose. It's going to become your core beliefs, your identity. It's going to become who you are. And you need to have something that is the thing that you do. So people get out of rehab after 30 days, and guess what happens? Bye, Cheryl. what happens after they've spent 30 days in rehab and they paid $30,000 for it, or their family did, or someone took out a loan on their house, or maxed out their credit cards? What happens after 30 days? What happens? Who knows? In 30 days, nothing happens. They don't talk to you. They don't call you. There's no follow-up. And I'm sure that this isn't every place. But I know that the ones that my son's been to, many of them very expensive, there might have been a phone call in a month later, but what are they going to do? There's nothing that they're doing now. They're not committed to, okay, I'm going to do yoga every day. I'm going to make sure I'm in nature every day. I'm going to listen to my recordings, or I'm going to use this workbook for these affirmations. Nothing. There's nothing. Now, not all of them are like that, of course. So that's the thing that long term you need to just look at how the kitty's here. Long term, what it is that they want and how they build a life. So they leave there with this big gaping hole in their soul and their psyche that makes it so they don't have anything to move towards. And somebody mentioned that earlier, trying to move my keyboard so the kitty won't sit on it. You're moving away from something. And we know that, you want to move away from the pain. And then Tony Robbins says if you make the pain great enough, then you will move away from it. But instead, maybe we want that to be like a little bit. We already know we want to move away from the pain, but what are we moving toward? What do we want? So Jen says, in the training for the Addiction Freedom Trainer package for $4.95, the same as we are taking now, and I just purchased for $100. I'm not sure what you just purchased for $100 because this is free. It is similar to this, but it's the entire training, because the entire training, if I do 2 days live in person, we're doing 20 hours about in 2 days, and there's some follow-up. And so the training online is going to be 10 hours, but we're going to go through all the elements of it. So we're going to go through all the drug training and the medical aspects of it, and also what you need to do in the rehab centers and how you would work with a group. But I have so many processes, and you're going to learn every process and how it is applied specifically to drug or alcohol freedom. And it is way, way more than we're doing in these 3 classes. But like I say, I'll keep doing the free classes probably here and there. But the core of it, I want to make sure that people are committed and they're going to take the entire training, if it's online or in person. And you can do both, and you can, keep coming to the ones in the future. Elizabeth says, thank you so much. You are spot on. Off to meet a client. Love your work and sharing. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, thank you. And thank you for coming and for telling your friends. Paul says, let's create a new political party, Freedom from Relapse. I like that. Yes, thank you, Edward. Okay, I hope I answered your question, Jen. I'm not sure what that you just purchased for $100. Is that the manual that you purchased? Because the manual by itself really, it has a lot of things printed out, but it's not the training. It'll give you tools, but it's not the training and the stuff that's going to help you to really understand what it is that you're doing in the work. Okay, so it's been an hour and a half. Woo, boy. Thank you all for sticking around. I love your questions, and I'll see you again on Wednesday. Same time, same place. Okay, and then you can always, message me on Facebook at The Addiction Project or on my personal page. Any one of those. I'm going to go. Bye-bye, everybody. It's been wonderful, and I'm very, very grateful that you're here, and just really grateful to make this connection with you, and who knows where this will go, but it will go somewhere awesome, I can tell. Bye-bye.